Welcome, everybody, to the Growing with Fishes podcast, episode number 4. I'm Steve with Ponics.
And I'm Marty from AP Meds.
And we do this podcast every week, or every week that we're able to try and promote more aquaponic cannabis growers and teach people about different things they can use, different topics, touch on the news, sometimes cannabis culture stuff, politics or legalities around cannabis and things like that, and just all things cannabis, but primarily focused around aquaponic cannabis production. Marty, why don't you tell us what you got going on in your garden, and then I'll talk about what I got going on down here in Jamaica.
All right, well, I'm in about 7 weeks of flower right now, and I have just the 4 plants and then some clones going on. And then last week, though, I've been, for you guys that, watch some of the videos and do that kind of stuff, you already know, but I've been dealing with powdery mildew, which is normally something I associate with lack of airflow. Every other time I've had it, it's been, I've noticed there's been a dead space of air, or, thought that I needed to add a fan, and that's always been pretty much the cure for it. I've never had to even really spray for it. I just cut it out and add some airflow, and had never really been an issue. And so this time it kept popping back up. I added another fan, still kept popping back up. And so I start, kind of looking around to see if, there's something else going on. And sure enough, I looked back behind one of my tanks, and a fish had jumped out and then flopped around so that it had gotten stuck almost stuck between 2 boxes. So I could only see about that much of his tail sticking out without moving stuff around. And so I happened to spot it. And by the time I had found it, he'd clearly been there for a while. Half of his skin was already on the top side was already gone. Like you could, everything had already decomposed inside, and was just covered in PM. It was just, the entire fish was just white fuzz around the outside. And so obviously scooped him up, got him out of there. And then I went through, sprayed that whole area down with a garlic and lemongrass oil spray. Just kind of washed out that whole area. And then went through and sprayed H2O2 water mix on all the plants anywhere that I thought might still be affected. And it's been a couple of days now, and I haven't seen any more. But I went through a lot of stuff trying to figure out, trying to solve it. So, I tried the milk mix, the 1 to 10 with milk. I tried the H2O2. I tried spraying. The first thing I tried was spraying beneficial bacteria.
What was you, Serenade?
It was actually, it's basically the same kind of thing, but it was from, I think it was from NPK Industries. But if you look at the back, it's essentially the same sort of microbes that you get to mix into.
Yeah, so most of those microbial antifungus stuff, Bacillus subtilis, or there's one other one, it's in the product, what the heck is that other one? They just got bought out by Monsanto the last year or 2. Actinovate, yeah. So Actinovate, actually, a lot of people aren't aware. They actually are owned by Monsanto now. They weren't a Monsanto product up until recently, but they are owned by them. At least that's what I've been told many, many times over. Yeah. So they actually use Bacillus subtilis. Well, I don't know if any of you guys keep chickens. If you guys go to your chicken store, your farm chicken store, and you go to the aisle for chicks, they actually have powdered Bacillus subtilis as a gut feed for chicks, for helping them with pasty butt and a few other issues. And you can actually, it's the exact same thing. It's just a powdered, stabilized form. So as long as it's not too old, you can actually mix that up with water, and it's like $1 for 3 packets of it. Each one of those will make a half gallon. Right. So it's a lot cheaper. So if you're looking for, if you're on a bare bones budget, definitely go with something like that. It's not quite as good as the other ones, but if you don't have the money, a lot of people don't have a lot of money. Plus, a lot of people are trying to stay under the radar. They're in a less than legal place where they live. and
Right.
they, you know, they don't want to necessarily go to a hydro store because they've heard a lot of horror stories. Then go to the farm store and, oh yeah, I got chickens, and you know, it's a lot, you know, so another option for people.
Right, for sure. And for me, I didn't want to like wait around and try and find something or order something. Obviously, when you've got, you know, you got a situation in your grow room, you can't just exactly order something off Amazon and wait for 2 days. I mean, I don't know if people haven't dealt with PM that often. It spreads extremely fast. In 2 days, you know, it probably at spreading at the same rate that it was when I found it with the fish still in there. You know, it probably would have been over most of my plants inside of 2 days. It grows really fast, and so it definitely. When I was looking for something to do about it, obviously I hit up the grow shop. I was actually hoping that they had, you know, something like modern microbes or something like that also, because I wanted to try a little bit more of a mix. But when I found that little packet of stuff, I saw on the back that it had the same stuff that was in Actinovate. It has it listed right on there as one. You know, there's like 30 of them, and it's just a little dry packet. You mix it with some water and sprayed on, and it actually did really well considering that the fish was still in there when I sprayed with it. I can't really give like a fair opinion on microbes for PM because obviously I didn't treat the source of the problem to start with, but it was the first thing that I treated with, and it actually did quite well in keeping it back to where I thought, you know, for about a day or so, I thought maybe I was out of the woods until it kicked back up again. Both the milk spray didn't really seem to do too much, but again, the source was still in there. The first round of H2O2 was kind of the same thing. I was a little disappointed, but again, source was still in there. So I can't really compare each one of those to each other, but once I got the source out of there and then I sprayed again with H2O2, I haven't had any more since then, knock on wood, obviously. But that's been, I think, about 3 days now, so I'm hoping that's been contained. But yeah, so those are the things that I had to deal with in the past couple of days. But you know, lost some branches, but overall, it's not that big a deal. And
So
yeah.
there's a couple of different ways that you can actually solve PM. So PM is a fungal spore, and the best way and the way that I've traditionally done it is sprayed something like Serenade or a Bacillus sabilis spray, you know, once a week through the system. And then another common one that I do is once a week is something like Kapow or another lemongrass oil or castor oil, or like you were saying, lemongrass oil and garlic oil is another great one. You know, that's very acidic. But if you alternate that between that and like a potassium bicarbonate or a potassium silicate spray, which is super high pH, as long as you're making sure it's no higher than about, you know, 8.5 or 9, you're not going to burn your plants too much, you know, you're not going to really risk burning your plants much. And then what you can do is alternate between those acidic sprays and then the very high pH sprays, and you know, go bouncing between a high and low pH on your leaf surface really makes it an unfavorable environment for that microbe. Is another way of, you know, long-term preventative. You know, you can't do as much late in flower because you risk burning your pistils and stuff like that, but you know, you can definitely use that in veg if you catch it in time. And like you're saying with the beneficial bacteria works extremely well. I've also done a lot of dosing with the Bacillus sabilis directly into the fish tank or the sump, and allowing it to be uptaken via the root system. The other one is I really haven't seen PM a whole lot since I really, you know, paid attention to my silica dosing and started really dosing a lot more for silica, because the silica makes a much stronger barrier on the leaf surface and on the cell surface that allows those allows those leaves to get a stronger protective barrier to prevent those mold spores from penetrating and getting established in the first place. Because what happens is that spore kind of sends down some mycelium into the leaf surface, and then it gets established, and then it starts to spread across the leaf. That's why it spreads so quickly, as it gets into the plant and then it goes across. But just because you have it in the part of the plant doesn't necessarily mean it's systemically across the entire plant, which is a common myth out there. You know, it could mean that it's on that branch or on that whole leaf or on that section of the plant, but like you did, you cut off the sections that were real bad because you knew that they were, you know, again, it was systemic, and that was the worst of it. You know what I mean? You were able to control it, nip it in the bud, and it was no big deal.
Yeah, that's you know, obviously it can get into the plant, and you know, people talk about it being systemic all the time. But I really think that, you know, as long as you essentially trim off what's there, or you trim off, you know, like for instance, if I find some on the lower portions of a branch, I'll just trim off that entire branch. And and I think that it definitely err on the side of cutting out more than less, you know, like nobody wants to go around and play that game of, oh, well, you know, that's just a little spot, you know, maybe it won't this or that. No, you come back tomorrow, you're going to be playing this game all over again of whether or not you should cut the next branch next to it. And, you know, it travels via air. So most of the time, you know, people have fans blowing in there anyway. So it can really end up just about anywhere from that one little spot. So my recommendation is to just err on the side of cutting out extra, just to make sure that you get it. And the only thing that I have to say about the oil spray is just that I use it in veg all the time, all the way up until about 2 weeks into flower, and then I stop using the oil spray so it doesn't start getting absorbed into bud growth. And obviously that kind of depends on, you know, some strains aren't, you know, haven't flowered that much into 3 weeks. You know, sometimes they're pretty thin and you just have pre-flower. So as long as you're still in pre-flower or veg, I would say that the oil spray is fine. But I avoid it in flower and definitely want to. That's why I looked at other stuff besides that evaporates faster and doesn't get absorbed into the bud. I was a little hesitant to do milk. Actually, I wasn't sure that I even wanted to try.
Plus, when milk dries, I mean, it kind of looks like PM. It's just a white powder on your leaf, and it's like, well, is that just lactose or is that PM? It's hard to tell the difference. I mean, it's not. Right. You can tell if they're side by side, but it looks very similar.
It makes it difficult. It's just kind of one more thing you have to, you have to check on all the time, and can give it a place to hide, a little camouflage, if you will. So I actually only did milk on a few test leaves, and so it definitely was a concern that it would get absorbed into the bud. After that, it was kind of pretty much just going with the H2O2, and it seemed to be doing quite well. But I think we lost Steve.
Sorry about the hiccup there.
Oh,
the Jamaican internet. I figured out. Actually, I made a script, so I don't know if you noticed it connected within a couple of seconds. So
yeah,
it should be a lot smoother now. I actually spent some time working on that the other night. So
nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did only try the milk on a little test section just because I was concerned about that, and it did, when it dried, it did leave that film on there, which I eventually cleaned off with the H2O2 because of that reason. You just get paranoid about whether or not it's PM or not, or PM is in there, and you have to check it every time and look that much closer. So finally I just cleaned it off and cut off anything that I didn't feel comfortable with. So I did end up cutting off probably about a third of one plant that was sort of right back there where right above where the fish was probably the biggest loss. Other than that, I pretty much just, defoliated a lot. I didn't have anything that was like up in buds or anything like that. So I did lose quite a bit of shade leaves, which is obviously not ideal by any means, but it's better than getting it up into buds and losing the buds altogether.
Oh, for sure.
So that's been my week. How about you, Steve?
I had one other thing I wanted to add about PM. So since I started growing in the dual root zone, I've actually been adding a little bit of the Bacillus sabilis, or using a microbe mix. In fact, recharge and modern microbes. And there's a third one that I use that I don't have the name of with me at the moment because it's not in front of me and it's back in my house in Colorado. All three of those that I've used and do use have Bacillus sabilis in them, and I always make sure that I really load up my my soil layer. And I've found that since adding a soil layer in the dual root zone, I really haven't seen PM as much. Even back when I had a greenhouse, and I'd even have it sometimes on the zucchini or cucumber once in a while, it never spread to the cannabis plants because and the zucchini and cucumber weren't in dual root zones. You know, they were just straight in the normal aquaponic beds. But the fact that it has that terrestrial layer where that heavy Bacillus subtilis layer, sorry about that, the heavy Bacillus subtilis, right next to the ocean here, so there's a road on the other side of us because we're right next to the ocean, so I can't 100% do everything about the audio. I apologize to everyone about that. I've tried to find a different, more audio safe. This is the quietest place I can find in the house. So, but yeah, so the Bacillus subtilis, if you have a soil layer, especially in a dual root zone system or dual root zone planting method, really helps provide a place for that Bacillus subtilis to thrive in the root zone and really get going and breed out into a much heavier population and being in the root zone where it can be uptaken by the plant and help plant, you know, challenge that plant's immune system and make it more resistant to those PM issues.
Right, and I've also been reading a lot in the PFA group about being able to treat it with labs, which is essentially the same kind of concept. And the only issue with that was that I didn't have the ability to breed labs within the time in which I needed to be able to do it. So it was, you know, it takes you a solid week or so to get a good labs mix going on. So I didn't really have that option at the time. But that's another thing, if you have some on hand. Like I made a small batch just in a little jar and put the whole thing in my worm bin. But if I would have added some molasses to say half of it, I could have just kept it in the fridge for up to 6 months. And then I would be able, you know, then I wouldn't be able to do that. So if you do end up making a batch of labs, you know, just save some in the fridge with a little molasses. And then that way, if you do need to treat for PM or you just want to, you know, dose a plant or a bed or something that you feel like is underproducing, you know, then go ahead and do that. I've only put it in my worm bin at this point, but the next batch that I put in, I'll probably add some directly to the beds just to experiment with it. But it's important, like you were saying, that, you know, the reason I put it in my worm bin is the same thing, is that there it'll have an environment that they can actually survive in, as opposed to the aquaponic system, which will have a difficult time surviving for any length of time without that kind of environment for it. So that's, I would say, just save some of your labs if you make some, because it would have been nice if I would have had some. I think it probably would have done a pretty effective job at treating it. Most people in the PFA group have pretty positive reviews on it. So that's another one that you can put in your pocket for that also.
Yeah, there's one of the other cool things I've learned, especially being down here from some of the Rastas and stuff, is they use a lot of coconut water and coconut extract for doing compost tea. And they said that adds its own, that has an acid and something else that really helps the microbes be really resistant to pathogens and stuff. And that's one of the things I've been reading up and talking to them about down here. The guy mentioned it to me and I started researching it a little bit, and there's actually some research behind it as well. So I thought that was another really cool thing that I hadn't previously heard of anyone putting in their compost teas, is adding, you know, quite a bit of coconut water.
Yeah, I was researching that too, because actually I don't drink dairy milk. So when I had to make my little batch of labs, I actually just went and got one of those little tiny milk cartons. Just because I didn't want to buy, you know, a quart of milk or something like that, or even a gallon of milk or anything, because we don't, you know, we just don't drink it. So it would just, the rest of it would just go to waste. So I did check out coconut milk as a way to be able to do that. And you can make cultures with it, obviously. It just won't create labs, obviously. Just because that's the particular breed of bacteria that feeds on lactose, and there's no lactose in coconut milk. So, but you can make different types of fermentations and get cultures off of them other than labs, but labs is a very effective way, an easy way of doing it. But when you have different sources like coconut milk or coconut water, like down there, you got to use what you got.
Yeah. And they do a lot of really, really awesome, you know, brewing of different things and just making use of what they have down here, and teaching me a little bit more about potassium and phosphorus production and a couple of other things. And, you know, some other different things that I've been exposed to. So it's been kind of fun. I had to resubmit or in the process of redoing all of our, or a little bit of our paperwork down here for licensing. I don't know if you guys know, the government recently changed hands by one seat right after we got all of our licensing done. So there's a new Minister of Justice, which means we have to resubmit everything. Am I skipping again? No, we're good.
You're
okay. Good. Okay. Yeah, so there's a new Ministry of Justice, so we have to resubmit all of our stuff, and they were supposed to start applications on April 4th. They still haven't taken it yet, so we've just been making sure that we have everything 100%. We actually expanded our program a little bit since our first version of this, so we have a few more people on board. Another company that has joined us since then down here in Jamaica, so we're in the process of just kind of finalizing everything so that the moment they were able to resubmit everything, we're all gravy. And we're in the process of building out. Here we have a kind of like a bed and breakfast / training center. We'll be able to have herbs and a little farm stand, and we'll have a cannabis growing training center. People can come down, stay on the beach, right across the street from the beach, and everything here soon. And in a couple of months, and we'll have a place where you can learn how to grow cannabis and aquaponics and have a nice little vacation in the process, and all that. And it'll be pretty sweet. So that's where I'm living right now. That's what I'm taking the process, just because it's a place to stay in the meantime while waiting for everything to get resubmitted, because this was kind of an unexpected hitch in the road that when I came down here we weren't expecting. So
right. What are you guys building out right now as far as systems?
So we're building out a whole hillside here. In the next 2 weeks we'll have the bamboo delivered to start building the framing everything out. But we're going to be doing kind of like a trellis system out of bamboo. We'll be doing all kinds of kitchen herbs and other production herbs, along with ganja and cannabis, in this nice little training facility that'll both be a training facility for our workers, our master growers that we're going to teach to train up other people for our couple different properties. We're going to be able to bring them out here, teach them how to grow on a model system. It's the same thing, just much more scaled down, and be able to produce everything from fish to veggies and everything like that. So that'll be really great while we're waiting on the rest of our licensing to go through. But we're also working on some spirulina production along with the fish production, so we can grow our own fish food, as well as supplemental nutrients, because spirulina, when you break it down, is a really high phosphorus source. So if we can, when we dry it out and concentrate it and then bake it, and then once it's dead, brew it back into a tea, it makes a really good phosphorus supplement for us to work. So it's really nice. So that's one of the other projects we're working on, which I don't know if anyone else is doing at the moment. So it's kind of a cool, kind of on the cusp of a few different projects that are kind of cutting edge on as far as sustainable production. Imagine being able to produce, 90% of your own fertilizer off the system. It's kind of, 90+% is kind of what we're aiming at. With the other part being potassium, which we can do by burning some of the stuff that we grow. So we can create ash, which is high in potassium, and calcium and carbonate. So we're working on balancing as much as we can produced off the system, because the less we can bring in, and then we can replicate this model and go elsewhere with it. There's plenty of places around the world that grow a lot of ganja and a lot of cannabis. You have all parts of Africa, parts of Southeast Asia, parts of South America, all are growing a lot of cannabis. And if they could bring in tourism and do it more sustainably at a lower cost to even the farmer, that's even better, and produce medicine and all kinds of other crops. You can make 55,000 different crops from the cannabis plant, between medicine and everything else. So
yeah, that's cool. So are you guys using the bamboo for like a big NFT system, or? Yeah,
so the bamboo we use for NFT, bring that back, for NFT, and for doing the framing. We can build all of our framing for the grow beds out of bamboo because it's really strong. And then what we can do after that is, tie that all together and then put our liner inside of it, and we can actually make our grow beds and our fish tanks out of that. It's super strong. It'll hold the weight, no problem. All we have to do is, frame it out with it. So it actually works as a really good building material, and it's super cheap down here. So when we were comparing the price between that and a lot of other options, we're pretty much going to go with rebar, block, and bamboo is going to be our cheapest setup.
Right on.
Not to mention, there's sections of the island where it's kind of becoming invasive. So there's areas where they have unlimited harvesting. You can legally go there and take as much as you want, and that's pretty great. So if you're trying to build something out, you're helping them clear cut an area where they don't want it and everything else. So.
Yeah, I mean, bamboo obviously is pretty famous for growing fast and growing everywhere,
especially in the tropics.
Right. Yeah, even around here, you can find it growing, in relatively thick patches. There's on my property down in Northern California. I mean, it's just barely over the border. I think it's like 12 miles or 15 miles or something like that from the Oregon border. But it has like 2 or 3 patches of pretty thick bamboo growing on it. Also, basically anywhere it gets, consistent water and not too cold. So right down on the valley floor along the creek, it grows pretty steadily.
So some other things, we had to do a quick trip around to take care of some paperwork, and we ended up going by Orange Hill. I'm sure you guys have probably all heard or seen about if you guys ever watched Strain Hunters and stuff. And we got a nice.
It's a cool Strain Hunters. I like how they.
Nice big old haul of charas, straight from Orange Hill. Can't complain. But that place is definitely a little sketchy. I would not recommend going there unless you happen to know someone and has family there, or know someone there. Or that's definitely not a place to go alone as someone that is not from Jamaica. I'll put it that way. It's not safe for that.
Yeah, that Strain Hunters episode was pretty cool. If you guys have, it shows how they make cars.
Yeah, it's a palm rolled hash where they take it and they take the buds and they roll them. Or they have fields of it and they roll the buds in their palms, and then they take their thumb and you do like a down. I'll show you here. A down and a half twist, a quarter twist, and you can get the hash to come right off your hand. Similar to scissor hash and all that. But it is so good and super strong. And it was definitely awesome to see different parts of the area. I definitely didn't. I wasn't comfortable pulling out my camera and risking pointing out the fact that I was just a tourist. But it was pretty awesome to experience and to see. We'll have we're gonna go back out that way, and this time we'll be back in kind of on the edge of it, and hopefully I'll be able to get some footage of some stuff this time on the second trip through. Hopefully sometime between now and the next 2 or 3 weeks I'll have some more footage of that. We'll take some video out that way. This first trip was a little sketch, I'll be honest with you. So we gotta be but yeah, it was definitely different, and definitely different than anywhere else I've been so far in Jamaica, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to at least be able to check that out, though.
Oh yeah, for sure. I just wouldn't recommend it as a normal tourist destination quite yet.
Right.
Any more than I'd recommend Kingston, for that matter.
Stick to the beach.
Stick to the North Coast if you're visiting, or Negril. Negril to Ocho Rios or even the Blue Mountains, they're not too bad. Just south. Well, some of the areas of the South Coast are really nice, but you're definitely a little less. You're looking at more like some of the worst areas of some of the U.S. But just be smart. Don't be stupid, and you're not going to have any problems. Most people here are willing to help you. And worst case scenario, if someone robs you, just yell thief, and half the people will come out to whoop some butt. They don't really tolerate that at all. There's quite a few people here that get pretty badly beat up after being a thief here. So if you do get robbed, just point at them and yell thief, and they'll get taken care of by anyone else standing nearby, unless they're in on it. So it's not as bad as people say it is. You'll hear some horror stories, but for the most part, it's a really nice place. But there's a handful of areas you really should avoid.
Well, yeah, like I said when we talked about this before, the same thing applies to Portland and Oakland and
Philly, New York,
yeah,
Chicago, Miami, anywhere really.
yeah, there's definitely some places where if you don't know somebody, you should just keep your tourist ass out.
Yeah, for sure. There's just certain areas that are for locals only.
Yeah. So what else you guys have going on down there besides that? Are you working out? You mentioned that you were getting the stuff built out, getting your licensing done. What else you been up
Yeah,
to down
so
there?
we've been in contact with the university that's going to work with us on some of the compound isolation and some research into like medical stuff. I have a lot of experience working at a previous job doing some extracts and stuff like that, and they haven't been exposed to half of the proper extraction methods down here. So we're going to teach them how to use CO2 extraction, how to do rosin extraction. We have another friend of mine that's going to be hopefully coming down here soon in a little bit. That's been doing some terpene extraction back in another part of the country in the U.S. So we have quite a different few things that going on. We're also working on a way to have a way for farmers if they want to apply to it. Assuming all of our licensing goes through, where local farmers can sign up for this like learn to do aquaponics production program, where they'll be able to come learn. They'll get an aquaponics system. They'll learn how to grow it in that method. Once they know how to do that, then they'll get a little LED panel to get for an LED light, and then they'll have for their mother plant, so they can grow all clones out in the field and get better production, and basically teach them how to do closer to kind of bring them up to speed with some of the wider scale production, and provide a really cheap means of doing it. But it also provide a 2 to 5% of their money that they make off of that will go back into this little insurance fund. All the money that's produced through this other system. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. So what will happen is they'll pay a tiny percentage back into the system. The group that we're with will end up doing, we'll put a whole bunch of money back in. They'll basically be like an insurance fund. So if a hurricane comes through, if they get robbed, if some other crazy stuff happens and their field gets all messed up, they'll be able to immediately get everything they need to get everything replanted, and we're going to get them back on their feet. Like, we're not, their ability to generate income is our first priority out of that program. But basically we'll be able to turn their stuff into extracts, and then once we have them growing the right strains, we'll be able to produce medicine for that down in Jamaica. And we have a university down here that's going to be doing a bunch of lab testing and research with us, and help working on the medical part of that, and basically being our doing all their research, and we'll be providing a whole bunch of stuff for them, as well as medicine for people that need it down here, assuming all the licensing works. But I don't think that'll be much of an issue.
Cool, man. That sounds good. Actually, one of my favorite things to smoke, I don't know if you can see this or not, I'll try to hold it up, but inside of my wand, it's this oil. You can see it just runs. It's like a liquid. So it's fully activated, decarboxylated, and you can just pour it out. It takes a little while for it to build up, but what's cool about it is you can smoke it, you can eat it, and you don't really have to do anything to make it. Obviously, it's not anything you do in production, but just for shits and giggles, reclaimed, vaporized is it's pretty strong. I freaking knocked my neighbor out with it. He doesn't smoke very much. He came over the other day, and I put some on, and he smoked out, and I think he took 2 hits, and we tried talking, just bullshitting for 5 minutes. And he was like, "Oh, I gotta go lay down," and he just left. So he was pretty out of it, but it's definitely strong. It's kind of a cool little thing for if you have a wand, if you've wondered about it. I wasn't sure what it was to start with. That was, I mean, I've had this for a while. I actually had a different wand vape before this too that did the same thing, but it's pretty cool. You can actually add it right to lotions as well, since it's already decarboxylated. So kind of cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I haven't done too much with that. Sorry, I had a little Scooby snack there.
Yeah.
Have you had anything else going on in your grow aside from your PM and all?
Just been pretty much consumed with that. I mean, I have all the stuff to put together the new cloning area. I got the shelves. I picked those up. I'm gonna line out the plywood with some so I make a plywood frame for the fish tank. And then I have some, it's like 1/4 inch foam insulation, like I can't remember what they call it, R-Tech or R-board or something like that. Basically, it's just a 1-inch piece of almost like soundboard. And then I'm going to put that in, and then the fish liner. So I'll have a little insulation around the tank as well. And so I'll have those to build out and have all that stuff to do. I've just been busy doing other shit. And so I'm probably going to get started on that today. Now that I got this PM situation under control and got everything cleaned, and yeah, so picked all that stuff. I put a new I don't know if you remember, I had a front porch aquaponic system just for fruits and veggies and stuff, and so I'm getting ready to get it set up again since we're finally getting some sun back on the front porch this time of year. The sun swings over. Our house pretty much sits basically east to west directly, so in about, I don't know, I would say in a month or so we'll get a lot more light because the sun will be just over the top and leaned over so that the sun comes in from on this side of the house for the front porch. So I put a new floor in there because it just had some old crappy plywood down on it. So I threw down some more plywood and got that all fixed up. So I'll be working on that system probably also in the next, I don't know, probably week or so. That place sent me that fish tank liner. It's like a whole roll of it. I think we lost Steve again. Reconnect, Steve.
Draw that.
There you are.
Yeah. Sorry about
that. So yeah, I have that roll of stuff that company sent me, the Ultra Scam or whatever it's called. And it's I think I have like 77 square feet of it that they sent me. So I'm gonna build a bunch of stuff out of it. So I had barrel beds, half barrel beds, which I love. I love barrel beds. I don't really have an issue with them, but since I have all this stuff to use, I'm gonna make a couple of beds for the front porch out of the Ultra Skim, and the tank out of the Ultra Skim for the front porch system, and we'll get that going, which is great. I love having a system that's like, you know, close to access. My systems in the backyard are always nice, but it's always, you know, you gotta walk all the way out there. It's probably like, I don't know, it's not that far, but it's nice and convenient to have. Like if you're just cooking and you want to go grab some sage or some thyme or something, it's nice to just be able to walk over and trim some off and throw it in the pan.
Oh, I forgot the other thing that happened to me out here. So last Thursday I was out in the yard cleaning and weeding and stuff, and was pulling down, and all of a sudden I felt a burning in my hand. I don't know if you can see, my whole finger's like busted open. I got stung by we think either a scorpion or a centipede, but it pretty much like made my finger split open. That sucked pretty bad. But I ended up getting treatment for all that and everything, and it sucked pretty bad. I was in a hell of a lot of pain I almost forgot about that just because I've had so many different things going on in the last 48 hours or so. But yeah, that sucked.
Yeah, I guess don't have those in Colorado, right?
Yeah, well, maybe down by Pueblo, but
maybe a rattlesnake, but
yeah,
probably not too many scorpions. We get some, they're like little black scorpions, We call them wood scorpions. I don't know what they actually are called, but we just always call them wood scorpions. But they get, probably about that long and just jet black. And we always find them in like dead wood, like dead rotting wood and logs and stuff like that. Real damp, dark places. Kind of like black widows are the same way.
Yeah, but black widows are usually super chill. Like I've bred them back for the pet trade back once upon a time. Them and brown widows. And they're not an aggressive species of spider. Nothing compared to some of the other species I've worked with for sure. They're super docile compared to other spiders. They'll run away far before they'll ever try to attack you.
Right. And we get them all the time around here, and like we just don't see them really unless you go look for them. They want to be in like dark, damp, places that don't see a lot of traffic other than bugs. So the only time that we do see them is in the summertime here when it gets real hot, and at nighttime they will come out to cool off because it's been so hot. So they'll like in between my house, so my house wall and the cement pad that it sits on, there's like a little bit of space like right under here where they're always hanging out in there. And in the summertime, they'll just drop right down in there. I've counted as many as like 16 in an area. They'll just drop down out of there to get. And when I asked the exterminator about it, that's what he said, is that they come out when it gets too hot during the day. They'll come out at nighttime and try to cool off, basically. And that's why you see them. But that's the only time I ever see them like actually out crawling around doing something outside, or unless I go like dig around in some, in the back of the shed or something like that. For the most part, you just don't ever see them, even though they're always around. But I've never been bitten by one. I've lived around them my entire life. They've never, I even messed with them as a kid. Obviously not the smartest thing to do, but even then it wasn't like a lot of other spiders that I messed with, which would, they would rear up and, look like they were going to fight as opposed to run. And the widows almost never did that. They would just run.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to mention there's a group of people down in the south. I think it's Louisiana, or I forget what state it is, to be honest with you. But their website is called igoponicsmobile.com, and they're basically trying to build a little mobile RV to teach children about aquaponics in different schools, and they're looking for funding. So if you have a couple extra bucks, definitely consider giving them your extra change or whatever you have to spare. That it's for a good cause, teaching kids, kind of like an Artmobile. If you guys live in the Northeast, we have the Artmobile. There's other different, traveling, educational mobiles out there, but this guy's the first one I think I've seen around doing an aquaponic one, so definitely please consider donating to him. It's for a good cause, and I can't think of a better person to give money to.
Yeah, I saw your post on that. It looked really cool. I was checking it out.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. The guy Facebooked me, and he was all super pumped that I was going to mention it. So. The other thing I wanted to mention real quick while we're doing my still going, my video froze, but
I still have your audio. I can hear you.
Oh, greatly. We're also now on our podcast is now hosted on the Dude Grows Show, so definitely check them out and check out realgrowers.com. They have a whole bunch of cool stuff over there. They're hosting us now as well, so shout out to those guys and appreciate them giving us the opportunity to have a wider audience and reaching more people as well.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm going to also try and do some articles as well on there, and you'll see Marty and I stuff up there in the future.
Yeah, I checked out the website. It looked pretty cool.
Yeah, we just finished getting it all set up the last day or two, so there was a little bit of a delay. We were hoping to get that done sooner, but things take time, especially when you're far away.
Right on. So you had a couple other things you wanted to talk about. I mean, we already touched on the microbial stuff a little bit, but did you want to talk about like modern microbes and mammoth P and some of those?
Yeah, actually, I guess I had another little segment I was hoping to touch on real quick before we get on with that stuff. Is so I was hoping to start a new segment this week, and hopefully you guys can write in and give us your other questions as well. But basically, it's kind of like, can I use this in an aquaponic system or with my aquaponic cannabis? Because that's something that we get, at least I know Marty and I get questions on all the time. And I had two. Go ahead.
I just send the questions to you. If anybody asks me, I just be like, yeah, Steve.
So so I pretty much did that as a job at my previous working for the aquaponics source and stuff like that. So we worked in the lab and we were testing all different kinds of things. So we had two different products that we've had people ask us recently. The first one is a product called Natural Up by Earth Juice. And that product raises pH. Both the products we're going to talk about today are pH up products. The first one is called Natural Up by Earth Juice, and it's the 99.5% potassium bicarbonate, and it's totally fish safe. Just remember that using bicarbonate will help raise both your KH and your pH, so it will do a better job at stabilizing your pH than the next product that we're going to talk about for a longer period of time. But it can, if you use it too much too long, if you do that, it could build up a carbonate buffer if you don't allow it to drift back down. Now the next one we have is Mad Farmer Get Up, which is primarily potassium carbonate, potassium silicate, and potassium hydroxide. And now this is super safe, and it's great. It's safe. It's great because it has potassium carbonate and potassium silicate, which is awesome because the potassium silicate adds silica to your system as well. Just remember that because it has the potassium hydroxide, you do risk overshooting your pH a little easier than with other products.
Yeah, which means you're going to need less of it to go farther, basically. You're going to use a lot less product, and it's going to go up a lot faster than with something else.
Yeah. And we're not sponsored by any of these people, just for the record. Nobody's giving us any money for any of this. We're just talking about different products that people ask us about. So if you have a question about any of this, please write us and let us know. If there's a product you're wondering if you can use it in your system, or you're stuck and you're only able to have a short list of products, shoot me an email at potentponics.com, and we'll answer it in one of our episodes. And this will be kind of a reoccurring thing.
Or if you're watching live, just type it in the chat box.
Oh yeah, and if anyone has anything live, does anyone have any other questions at the moment live? I know we have a couple people in live chat. Let's see if anybody has any.
We'll give them a minute to type in. I know one of the ones that I get asked about a lot are the Mammoth P is a popular one right now, which is the phosphorus adjusting bacteria. And I have a sample of that on my way, but I have multiple people around here that I know that use it in their living soil setups and swear by it and say there's a noticeable difference in their plants within just like a week. And most of these guys are people that have grown the same strain over and over again on production runs. So they have a pretty good baseline of what their plants and strains should be producing and know that there is an increase. So I can't personally say much about it yet, other than the research that I've done on it, which like I said, it's a high concentration of microbes that are specifically bioengineered, or maybe not bioengineered,
selected,
bred, I guess. You probably know the better terms than I do, but essentially they breed these and put them in high concentrations in the Mammoth P so that you can release them and have all of those doing all kinds of good stuff. But basically it just makes phosphorus more available, and that's pretty much the main goal of it. From what I understand from their website, there's not really other huge benefits to adding it other than just additional microbial life.
So it actually does a few other things. It does make other micronutrients such as molybdenum and a few others available. I noticed a big difference in color. All the ones that I have that have a lot of color in them have a big, noticeably more color to them since using that product. And I've used it quite heavily since I got it first introduced to it. Back in January before I left, and I'm back at home. I still have a grow going. My girlfriend's taking care of it, and they're using it quite heavily, both in the water and in the soil zone. No problem with the fish at all. There's no detrimental effect with it. In fact, I've used a wide range of microbes, and I don't think I've had a single one of them really have any negative impact on it. A lot of them change the plant availability, but not necessarily the parts per million level of the water. They're just changing the way that the plant, how easy it is for the plant to uptake it. So it's, you don't really have to worry about it a whole heck of a lot. You can use them pretty liberally, regardless of what you're using, whether it be recharge or minor microbes or Mammoth P.
Right, and we touched on this a little bit last week too, which is that there's a difference between microbial supplements and nutrient supplements. When you add in things like Mammoth P or even like the little pack of NPK microbes that I have, you're not adding nutrients to the system unless it's included in the mix. There are a couple of microbial mixes that I've seen that'll have like, they're like 001 or something like that.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of seaweed basically to feed them.
Right, not too much, but there's a difference between adding a supplement to your system and adding microbes to your system. The microbes are just beneficial bacteria that are going to help break down what's already there. And so for the Mammoth P are focused mostly around that. The modern microbes, which we are around phosphorus, and the modern microbes are focused more around nitrogen fixing stuff from the stuff that I read. And I've used modern microbes in my worm bin as well. I just had a little sample of it that I got from one of my buddies who had a sample of it. So but I threw it in there, and I would say both the modern microbes in the labs, made, I guess, different enhancements. After I added the modern microbes, it seemed like the fuzz across the top, the mycelium, established faster. And when I added the labs mix to it, it seemed like it would break down food faster. So things were, if I put a banana peel in there, it would break down and be consumed faster than what it was before. So those are my observations from using those in just the worm bin. And I'll probably start adding them directly into my system as soon as I get finished with all my other projects and bullshit I have going on. But when I think what I'm going to do is add them to the worm tea. When I mix it up, I'll just add in my beneficial nutrients or beneficial bacteria right into my worm mix right before I pour it into the system. Just divide it up that way. Seems like easy enough way to do it.
Yeah, that's actually a great point, and something that you don't really hear a ton of other people talking about is, adding those beneficial microbes to your worm bin and to your earlier compost phases rather than directly to your soil, because if you can get them to start breeding out even earlier in your nutrient cycle, that's even better, because you're just going to end up with higher populations on the back end. When you're adding those other food sources later on, you're adding a lactose source or a sugar source or an ethanol source or whatever you're trying to feed, you're going to end up with a much higher population because you've already been culturing them for a period of time.
Right, and so I already have most of those things already in the, like I said, in the worm bin, and they'll stay there, and I'll get some of them coming through in the tea that I make out of it. So it's essentially just increasing the numbers that I'm adding it in. And so that's my theory anyway. We'll see how it works out.
And that's something else that's important too. The more microbe diversity you have, the better the product you're going to end up with. That's one of the benefits of using dual root zone, is that You know, the upper half is your terrestrial microbes, the bottom half is your aquatic microbes, and you know, the ones that are going to primarily colonize the terrestrial zone are going to do that. The ones that primarily want to colonize an aquatic zone are going to do that. You're getting kind of the best halves of both worlds. And you know, you can continue to supplement with, you know, change your microbes up every couple of weeks and make sure you're getting a good rotation of it, so that, you know, you're making sure you're covering all your different bases and getting as many different as much biodiversity as possible. You know, it only results in the most amount of micronutrient input as possible into your plant.
Right, and which is, you know, obviously the goal. I mean, that's why they add like the sugars and ethanols and stuff to it. It's not that bacteria wouldn't eat other things. It's that they really love the stuff. That's what gives you the most reproduction and gives you the highest counts of bacteria in your system, which is what you want. So if you, like for me, I don't run dual root zones. My microbial life that will die out faster, even though I have it coming in from the worm bin. It's not gonna maintain life as long in the actual aquaponic system. It'll have to be resupplemented, and so there'll be times in which the plant is not getting the benefit of that microbial life as opposed to otherwise. So even if you don't do anything else in terms of like supplementing, you do have that in which you'll have longer microbial life in a dual root zone than without. Oh, I think we lost Steve.
No, and you'll end up with a bigger diversity of microbes as well. You know, you have a better place for your mycorrhizae to get established, and you know, maybe next episode or the episode after we'll do a better, you know, bigger episode on mycorrhizae. But you know, modern microbes and recharge both will have a lot of mycorrhizae in them that really help you you know, establish your fungal colonies, and the fungal colonies are actually what transports all of your stuff. I used to use modern microbes, but I've since maybe about 2 or 3 months ago switched back over to recharge, or not back over, but just pretty much stopped using modern microbes, just because when I tried running 2 side-by-sides, I didn't really see much of a difference with the modern microbes versus the one I ran with just the recharge. So I've been actually just running the recharge, at least in my home system back in Colorado, along with Mammoth P, and then I also use the Keto Life, Keto Microbes as the other one that I'm using at home right now, or at least what is being used in my garden back in Colorado at the moment, I guess is the better way to say it. And they're all doing really great. I'll hopefully have some pictures for you guys at some point. I saw them on a cell phone the other day, but that's about as much as I've seen them since then. I honestly have so much stuff going on down here. I really haven't had time to worry about all that. Plus, I'm not going to be there for the next couple of months, so you know, center can really that's lower on my radar compared to everything else I have going on at the moment. But that's what I'm using currently at home. Another thing I wanted to touch on too is, you know, you guys can use sugars such as, you know, raw sugar in the raw, cane sugar. You can even use bleached sugar, which is probably the one I would recommend the least, but it'll work. Pineapple juice, coconut juice, coconut milk, pineapple chunks. Feed it to your fish. You'll get a high sugar content coming back out the other end of your fish. And all those will help really, really increase, especially potassium and iron availability temporarily. Once it burns through those, your microbes that feed on those 2 things in particular and like to make them available will help them increase pretty rapidly. I always add a little bit of molasses or a little bit of pineapple juice whenever I add iron and potassium to my systems. It's just something that I do regularly, and I've been doing that for quite a while, and then just a little bit of a boost to how quickly the plants respond. And it shaves about a day or 2 off how quickly the plants respond to what I add, depending on what I'm trying to supplement. The other thing that is a lot of experimentation with is ethanols. You know, there's different alcohols that you can use. Vodka dosing is one you can use to reduce nitrates in flowering. There's a lot of research done with that around reef tanks for feeding microbes, both in fresh and in salt water, in aquariums. both in reef tanks and in freshwater, for reducing nitrates. So you can actually use that in flowering a little bit to both feed your microbes and feed a microbe that helps reduce your available nitrogen levels to your plants and make it, lower them a little bit. Help you flower if you're running real high in nitrogen. It's one more little trick you can add, and so, along with the water change and other things.
Nice. Yeah, I mostly put, I put a lot of those different things into my worm bin in terms of, like I always do all fruit. We've talked about this lots of times in terms of that is that, don't want to add any nitrogen, that kind of stuff. But all those things that you mentioned is all just breaking down fruit to make fruit. I mean, or it's already been extracted, like the sugars and that kind of stuff. It's all just, the microbacteria will feed on a lot of different stuff, and there's a lot of different things out there that won't affect your fish. But I understand, people's hesitance to want to add different things directly into their system without knowing. So I think that's a great thing to have different suggestions for stuff that you can add and that other people have already done, so you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and for anyone watching, there's pretty much zero risk of you killing your fish with any of those microbe products. All of them are just different, basically microbes that work with the plant root system. For lack of better explanation, for a very simplified explanation. But none of them are making your nitrogen super high or phosphorus incredibly high. What they're doing is they're taking what's in the system and making it much more plant uptakeable, so that the plant roots can take up much, a lot easier what's actually in your system. And that's primarily what you're adding them for, with the exception of, when you're adding cycling bacteria, then you really are boosting the ppm levels. But for what I've seen, I haven't seen a huge boost in the testable ppm levels of my phosphorus in my system back in Colorado. But I have noticed a huge difference in how, the reduction in nodes distance and bud size is starting to swell up in the flowering room as well. Real nice, better than some of the other stuff that I've done before. Not all, but
Yeah, I've heard a lot of the same stuff from other people too. Like my buddy that does the living soil grow, I think he's only about maybe 4 weeks in the flower right now, and he says there's a noticeable difference in the size of the flowers and the amount of frost that is present early in the cycle. And again, this is strains that he's done before, so he has a pretty good idea of when that stuff should happen and what size flowers he's gotten before in the same room with the same lights and same genetics, all that stuff. So same thing from him too. Bigger, better flowers, which can argue with that.
Yep. And when you use that with something else like recharge or one of the other microbes, you can really get the full spectrum that you're looking for, because all these different companies have different, they all have a different formula that works really great for them, and there's a slight variance. But a lot of these guys work together and and have their different things going on, and or have overlapping ones, but they don't have maybe 4 or 5 different microbes, but that might dramatically benefit the other ones that you have. So definitely diversifying a little bit is a really good idea, and definitely you'll notice a difference between the plants you do and don't do that with. But even on the days that you're using just water, I know that I do, when I do top feeding in my dual root zone, I'll do a day with fertilizer and then a day with just water. But the day with just water, I'm still feeding microbes, because there's really no downside to that.
Right. And I do the same thing, like especially for the last week or so when I've been spraying a lot of H2O2, I've been, redosing beneficial microbes, because obviously that H2O2 is going to kill off everything, including the beneficial microbes. You try to keep it out of the beds and all that stuff, but I figure some of it is probably going to get in there anyway, even if it's just on top. So I go back through and try to boost after I go through and spray the H2O2, I try to go back through and spread a little bit of worm tea around and then I also mixed in those other microbes from the NPK Nutrients, I think is the name of the company, and they have specific packets. They're just like little powder packets that you mix into water to activate them. It's really simple to do, and there's a list on the back. I'll send this stuff to you, and I basically just got it because it was what was available. And like I said, I noticed on the back that it had the same stuff that Actinovate had in it, and that was pretty much what I was focused on at the time. But I'll send you that stuff. But I pretty much figured the same thing, which was the the more beneficial bacteria you can add into the system, the better. And they didn't have anything else, so that's what I went with. Process of elimination, I guess. But I definitely go through and try to redose beneficial bacteria if I spray anything that's going to suppress them. So even the garlic and oil sprays, about a day or so after that, I'll usually come back through with just water and beneficial microbe mix and get them spread back out again.
Yeah, it's definitely something that you want to pay more attention to, because it means you can end up using a lot fewer, less nutrients in the long run. Save you a little bit of money on the back end. So.
Right, and you want to have, if you're knocking out bacteria, you want to add some back.
So one of the other cool things I saw recently, there's a company in Netherlands or in, let me double check this here. I actually have a link to it. I think they're out of the Netherlands. And they have this thing called clone seeds, where they can take tissue samples, even from plant latent flower, put it into this little gel cap, and then basically get a whole clone out of it that grows just the same as a seedling, because it has this, plant hormone and some other stuff in this little gel capsule. They're not available to the public, but it's pretty close to being available for sale in the commercial market. They're hoping to bring it to market by the end of the year, it looks like. But it was a really cool article. It was on DutchPassion.com, and the article was on clone seeds. And I thought it was a really, really neat article on kind of the bleeding edge of cannabis production, because we've all had a plant where we didn't have another seed or another clone, and it was really killer, and for some reason, this, that, or the other, we didn't have any more genetics for it. This would allow you to take a piece of bud, even latent flower, and cut it off and put it inside this little capsule, close it up, and then wait a period of time, and then you'd have a whole new little plant growing from the same genetics, and it's kind of a whole new era for cannabis production. It's kind of neat to see some of the really trippy stuff like this. I thought that was really freaking cool.
Yeah, I've read a lot about tissue culturing, and I know one guy around here that does it. And he posts in one of the groups all the time, one of the local groups here for Southern Oregon. And he talks about how they do it. And, from what he says, that in some cases, you can even, they've had success doing it from a dried bud. Which is just, obviously that opens a lot of things up, I guess, for people who are in that same situation, I know people that have, that save, the last bud for special occasions of different kinds and sorts of things like that. So I'm sure that there'll be some people that will definitely pique their interest on that. And they talk about it almost every time you post it. He posts sort of the little process that he goes through, and he just uses little test tubes. You can actually, you can look up how to do it at home. But what you're talking about is like sort of a plug and play version of it. I looked it up after you talked about it, and it was basically, like you're saying, you basically get like a little capsule that you put it inside there, and they give you all the stuff to mix up and what to do, and you can do it with your own stuff. And I think if they can get it to the market, I think they'll do quite well with it. I think it's very cool.
They'll sell the crap out of that thing. It's just really neat.
I'll buy some.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the other things that came up is yesterday, Australia, the state of Victoria, legalized medical cannabis They're going to have medical cannabis production, and they're the first state in Australia to legalize medical cannabis. So congratulations on that. That was pretty great.
Yeah, now they can start fucking up legalization with the rest of us.
Oh yeah, now they can do local ordinances and potency laws and all the other ridiculous bullshit that we have to deal with. The next thing was the DEA is going to hold hearings again on whether or not cannabis should be Schedule 1. The FDA has completed their report on and submitted to them, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, their findings on cannabis and whether or not it's medical application. So we're going to see what both the FDA and the DEA has to say about it here in a couple of months. And that'll be interesting. Probably more bullshit, but we'll see. And then the other big news story lately was Howard Marks died. For those of you who don't know who Howard Marks is a world-renowned drug smuggler who worked from everyone from the CIA to the KGB and everyone in between. He was arrested for a while. He came out once he was released from prison. He was known as Mr. Nice because he used a convicted killer's something nice's passport when he was trying to flee the country. One time he bought it from him, not knowing who the guy was. And that was how he ended up getting caught. Or something like that. I might have that part wrong. But afterwards, he became a huge cannabis activist and lobbied really hardcore in the UK. I think he ran for office a few times or something like that as well. But he sold stuff for the CIA and a whole bunch of other really nefarious stuff involving the Reagan administration and a few other people back in the day, and he helped expose a lot of that as well. And help bring that to light. So he's a really, really great guy, and it's sad to see him go. If you guys go to Aquaponic Cannabis, was Aquaponic Cannabis Growers. Sorry, I'm a little stoned right now.
Yeah, that's the Facebook group. I'd read
the Facebook group that we're both the administrators of that I'm too stoned to remember. The Aquaponic Cannabis Growers. If you go on there, I actually posted a little documentary on them. It's pretty dope. If you're serious about learning more, just join on there. And there's a really cool documentary posted on there, thanks to another group guy. So definitely check it out.
Yeah, I checked out part of it. I haven't checked out the whole thing yet, but definitely pretty cool. Definitely lived a full life, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, he did all kinds of crazy stuff. So how's everything going on in Oregon as far as your legal shit show?
Well, unfortunately, not a whole lot has changed. We do have a couple of lawsuits against Jackson County that have been filed. And we were able to get the processors licenses, the temporary licenses in place like we talked about last time. So I do know a couple of people have done that. I've heard that there's actually been a couple of recreational licenses released. I don't know anybody personally who's got one, but if you believe what people say, there's been a few people that have gotten them issued, which would be cool. Those would be the recreational growers licenses. There's nobody that's gotten processor licenses available yet. So, but everybody who has applied gets a temporary one, so at least dispensaries can start processing it. So I don't really know what the difference is. Like, basically when you turn in your application, they just make sure it's complete, and as long as you have all the stuff that you filled out that you're supposed to have filled out, then you get your temporary one. And I'm like, well, what's the fucking difference between that and just giving them a regular license? You know what I mean? Like, if somebody has to review all of their shit anyways, like, why don't you just give them the license at the time? Like, why does it take months for you to do it? altogether, or what? You know what I mean? Like, we're not talking about a ton of material here. We're talking about, you know, a few pages of an application and some documents that you have to make sure that are, you know, legit. But other than that, you know, how long does that really take? You know, even a house only takes, you know, you can get that done in 30 days if you really push that shit through and do it right. You know, you can sign all this stuff, and, you know, even then it's 60 days. Like, why are you saying it's going to take 120 days to be able to process some paperwork? Especially when you've raised all of our rates now, so that you can, you know, hire people to be able to do this. And that's how you justified raising everybody's rate by $200, just to, like, every patient who doesn't grow for themselves had their fees increased by $200 basically, unless you qualify for like OHP or you're a vet or something like that. We do have a couple of cool programs like that where it's only, I think vets only pay like $50 or something like that. But right now, if you are just a normal patient who registers with a grower besides yourself, you're essentially looking at like $450 by the time you get done paying for everything, and that's every year, $450. So that's, you know, it used to be $250, and now they increased it. So even in spite of all that extra revenue and everything else that they're supposed to do, they're still saying it's going to take 120 days to get those things processed. And I don't understand what takes so long. If you look at the actual information, you know, there's just not that much to review. I don't understand why it takes 120 days to make sure that everything is where it is. And they do that now anyway. They look it all over to start with before you get your temporary license. Like, why not just do it right the first time and have it done? And I would say 30 days is reasonable. It's probably, you know, longer than it should take. I'd say it'd probably only take 7 days if you're really doing it right. But I don't know, it just seems like just more red tape, more ways to only keep the people growing that you want growing. And then it allows counties and cities to be able to come in after that and try to put in any more ordinances that they want. So it's definitely difficult. We get baby steps. We get, you know, here's some temporary licensing. And we still have all the, like we talked about before, the edible concentration stuff. Nothing is changing on that. So we're still going to be the state that has the lowest allowed amount, I guess you would say, in edibles. I don't remember what the percentage is, but it's crap. It's like 50 milligrams per edible or something.
Or something.
It's really dumb. Whatever it is.
Really badly low.
Yeah. So
They just need to come up with a grading system, like a proofing system, like give people the high end shit, but like people need to be able to understand the potency. This is why Colorado adopted lab testing for all their stuff. You know, you have to have on the label what the cannabinoid profile is and the potency. But then the customer knows what the customer can use that to gauge their own dosing. Just require that. This isn't hard.
They already do. They already do.
Then what? This is ridiculous then.
Yes, that's the point. It's ridiculous then. And basically what, you know, their argument always goes back to, oh, well, we got to protect the kids. You know, we don't want them to get, if they get a hold of a high concentration edible, but what'll actually happen, you know, so that's what I don't get. But that's always the stand that you know, anytime you go to like the county meetings or you go to whatever else, you know, when you start talking about the potency issue, there really is no argument to it other than, you know, that they don't want it to be so potent that if a kid gets a hold of it, that it could do them harm. And you can ask the same question over and over again, you know, like, well, that, you know, how much is that? You know, like that,
right.
That you can't really get enough. We talked about this before, like, you know, alcohol, you know, you can fit enough in this glass to be able to kill a kid. But yeah. In a brownie, in a pot brownie,
you could fill that thing with a whole pot brownie or all pot batter. Not even a pot brownie, just raw pot batter. Kid, eat pot butter. You can eat the whole thing of pot butter. You'd sleep for 3 days, but that's the worst that would happen.
Busy? Do you need something? Yeah.
So, you know, that's why it's totally ridiculous. And, you know, then why not hold the buyers accountable? You know, we hold parents that serve kids alcohol accountable. Why is this any different? You know, just the parents should be in charge of keeping this shit away from their children, the same way we do alcohol or anything else or prescription drugs. This is not.
Right.
This is no difference to this. So, you know, why this needs to be treated any differently is asinine. You know, you could kind of agree with keeping it in child-proof bags. Okay, cool. That's what they do in Colorado. But then it makes a barrier between a child being easily able to get in there.
Right. And so I don't understand any of their arguments for any of it. Like I said, you can ask the same question over and over again, and ask why they picked the potency that they did, or why there hasn't been any incidents in the, you know, what is it, like 9 years now, or probably even longer than that, I don't know, that we've had the medical marijuana program here that's had edibles at high concentrations. You know, like, if you're so concerned about it, then please show me a case in which a kid has gotten an edible and there's been an issue with it. You know, just produce one. And obviously they can't, because it doesn't happen. And those same edibles have been made and packaged in the same way, and, you know, done everything in the same way. The medical marijuana program here in Oregon has been running fine for years and years and years, and now all of a sudden everybody needs more regulation, and most of that is unfortunately because of recreational. And that was why legislation was put in place, to make sure that, I shouldn't say make sure, to attempt to make sure that they would not be able to put any more restriction on it. And then that's exactly what happened anyway. You're on mute.
So we have a couple different people watching us. We had Dirty QWERTY said lab tests and cannabinoid levels and pesticides that should be required for selling products. That is the only law that cannabis should have. Yeah, I agree. You know, it should be just like alcohol. You have to label what the product is. You got to put what does it contain? What is the potency? That's reasonable. There's nothing ridiculous about that at all. You know,
Right.
and it should be tested for pesticides. Same deal.
Mold,
You know,
mildew.
nobody wants, mildew and pesticides, anything that's going to cause harm to someone, if it's testable, you know, and reasonably cost, or at least common, you know. You know, there's no reason not to test for that, and that's really what, regardless of where you're looking at a legalization movement, you want those things to be included for your own health, you know, and that's something that, you know, a lot of people don't understand, is you do need some level of legislation, and thank goodness for states like Oregon and Colorado, and Washington, I think, starting to get on board with this, with the approved pesticide list. You're only allowed to use pesticides on that list. That's it. No offense or buts. And you know, if it's not on there, you can't use them. So definitely, you know, consider that if you're helping to write your senator or write your whoever, or your local congressman, your parliament member, wherever you may be in the world. You know, make sure that you ask for things like that. You want to know the quality of what's being sold. You want to know if there's pesticides in there. You don't want to get sick from that crap. You know, so make sure that you have that as part of your provisions for your health and for the safety of your own country's reputation.
Yeah, I think that there's really nothing else that needs to be tested. Like, I completely agree with what he said, because I feel like as long as you can create quality product, you should be able to take it to the dispensary and have it sold. And that the limitations and regulations that they want to put on us, or extort money out of us to get retarded permits or different things like that, for people that are just trying to produce medicine, in the way that they label it for profit can be really annoying. Basically, if you grow for anybody besides yourself, if I wanted to grow for my grandma who doesn't live here at this residence, I'm automatically labeled for profit, and then have to pay $1,500 per year for a permit from Jackson County. And it's just straight up extortion. And it doesn't have anything to do with providing better quality products or protecting anybody or any of the bullshit that they say that it does, because it doesn't accomplish that. The only thing that accomplishes that is testing the product when it comes into the dispensary, which you already do so that you know what you're smoking. Obviously everybody, or I don't know about everybody, maybe some people don't, but I think that you can at least see the value in that and why that people want to do that, because anybody who's got shitty weed from somebody or moldy weed from somebody knows that it sucks to spend your hard-earned money on something that will just make you sick instead of make you better. So, or if you're a cancer patient, for instance, you know, a lot of times there's no way that you would be able to consume that mold or mildew. It can be dangerous to your life, because you know, a lot of times if you're going through chemotherapy, your immune system is so weak that any type of that kind of stuff is just going to attack you. And it's so I definitely think that mold, mildew testing is absolutely important. I think potency testing is absolutely important, but that's just for the own knowledge of the person. I don't think it's about protecting kids. I mean, obviously I want to protect kids. I don't want them to be exposed to it, but I don't think that the potency really makes that much of a difference in terms of if when they are exposed to it, is it really going to make a difference, or are you really just inhibiting patients to buy higher dosages of stuff so that they're simply going to have to buy more. You know, the brownie is going to end up costing basically the same amount. If you're getting edibles, the brownie or the cookie or whatever else, it's going to cost the same amount with less medicine in it, which means you're going to have to buy more of it, right? I mean, that's really the only way that you're going to be able to get around it. Buy more, eat more, take more. That's it. Your mic's out. I got no sound at all. You broke it, Steve. Nothing.
Oh, how are we doing?
There you go.
Awesome. Sorry, I have no idea what happened there.
You're back.
My microphone switched to a different microphone. I don't know why that happened. So I lost my train of thought there. What was the last thing?
We were talking about edibles and
Oh,
posts.
yeah. Well, they just want to sell more units and make more tax money. You know, this isn't hard. It's just about, again, it's about greed. There's nothing about this. It's not about greed.
I saw Oregon in January took in like 3.2 or 3.6 million dollars in tax revenue in the first month, because the taxes didn't act. Legalization kicked in last year, but taxes didn't kick in until the first of this year. So that's when all the revenue started coming in. And so for Oregon alone, in the month of January, they took in over $3 million of revenue. That's all going to go to funding, you know, state-funded stuff, which is awesome in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's one of the things a lot of people don't realize is a lot of these legalized states, all that's going to the state medical program, state school program, and that's some, you know, especially in Colorado, it's a huge percentage of it goes to the schools. And you know, what more could you ask for, really?
Right. In law enforcement too, we talked about that a little bit last week.
Oh yeah, and law enforcement.
Yeah, again, I think that'll, you know, I think that's a good thing. I like that a percentage of it goes to it. Obviously, I want to prioritize schools and those other things first, but I do like that a portion of it goes to law enforcement to at least attempt to disarm their desire to want to bust people so they can take their money.
As long as it's about training them about, you know, how the differences between the violent people and the people that aren't.
Right.
You know, people moving towards, you know, teaching cops about, you know, what a grow looks like and not to over exaggerate. And, you know, there was just recently a bust where they were valuing the plants at $3,500 a plant. Unless each one of those is outdoor and you're growing, you know, more than 2 pounds plus, you ain't getting $3,500 per plant.
You know, so where are they getting this crap at? You know, again, it's about lack of education.
Right. I mean, you're looking at, probably at least a 6 foot plant, in order to be able to do that. And most people indoors are, usually down around 3 feet or so, and, probably getting half of that, if that, if they're probably even less than half that per plant. So you definitely have to be outdoors and probably a relatively good climate for growing in, and somebody doing an extremely good job. And if you're getting 2 pounds of plant, I'd say you're at least 6 to 8 feet tall. That's if you're doing a great job.
Yeah, you can get them off the smaller plants, but you got to know what you're doing. The likelihood of your average person getting that is pretty low, and that's kind of my point, is that they always exaggerate the weight and the cost per plant and all this other stuff just to make themselves look good. And they gotta, with a little bit of education, we can help curb some of that.
Right. And then the other thing, and we talked about this last week too, is that if we're funding the cops, then I want the cops to show up. If somebody shows up at my house to
break
steal
into your
weed,
grow,
then I want you to come protect it like any other piece of my property in the same way. So
exactly.
I think as long as it's a give and take like that, and I find that most of the officers around here that I've dealt with, I've only had a couple of them that have shown up here. And just because of my neighbors, I have my neighbor over here that was growing, and he got a bunch of complaints about his grow next door. So I actually just went over and talked to him the first time.
Oh.
Just to say like, hey, this is him, this is me. You know what I mean? Like, that's all his stuff over there. Mine's over here. We do our own thing. Like, and he said he didn't even know that I had a grow there. That the only people that had complained about the neighbor. So it was a good chance to be able to talk to him, and he was very, very knowledgeable. He definitely was very cool about it. And the other guy that showed up here, because when I put in my outdoor last year, my neighbor on the other side, who's the old Republican cranky, sort of, I don't know, crabby old man next door, sort of the cliche, I guess. But he's particularly grumpy in most cases. So he finally filed a complaint about that, because we had somebody staying back there with the plants, because it was relatively late in flower, and
worried about these.
They camp out back there for security, and they had a dog staying with them. They said he was barking too much. He's a big pit bull. Nice, friendly dog. The only time he barked was when his owner left, though. Like, the owner would go to the store or something like that, and he just barked the whole time he was gone. And
good. No one's there to watch the plants. It's exactly what he's supposed to do.
Oh well, so the guy that came to talk to me about it, he was really understanding too. I just took him back there and I showed him. I was like, here's all my registration information, and here's where the dog stays, and here's where my buddy stays to keep security. And he was like, okay, cool. Basically, he didn't really have much to say about it. He took some notes and was like, all right, seems like you got everything in order. And that was it. So
yeah, as long as you're not pushing your plant counts, they're not going to get pissed off.
Well, yeah, don't do illegal stuff.
Yeah.
That's a big part of getting along with cops. Now, not all cops. Some of them, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of cops that are on power trips, and even the ones that I've met around here for other reasons, like I got pulled over for a seatbelt ticket, which really pissed me off, because I was just leaving the coffee shop. I was like, I pulled over, got a coffee here at Human Bean, and I had taken off my seatbelt so I could get my wallet out, and was like literally pulling out into traffic and putting my seatbelt on at the same time. And he wrote me a ticket for that, because he said that I was putting on my seatbelt just because I saw the cop. And I was like, well, okay. But he basically flat out said I was a liar, and that here's your ticket. I told him to enjoy his quota. He glared at me. Probably wasn't a smart move, but I'd already had my ticket, so I figured I might as well take my shot while I could. He didn't do anything else, so I guess it was all right.
You're lucky.
Yeah.
That wouldn't fly everywhere.
Oh, I also have the proper skin color too. Not to be politically incorrect or anything, but I'm sure other people with different skin color could not get away with the same thing.
I have the opposite problem where I'm at right now, so
Right,
it's
which
kinda
is funny, right? Yeah,
it is kind of funny in a strange way.
right. Because it's just about being different, right?
Yep.
Like, now you're down there, you're the different one as opposed to the other way around. And so, but I definitely want to be sensitive to that. I don't want to make it seem like as long as you follow the law, the cops will be fine to you. That's not the case at all. So, but it definitely goes a long way with when you have somebody coming
It
to
helps.
inspect your grow. If you're not over your limits, then it's definitely a big advantage of that.
Gives them less of a reason to bitch for sure.
Right. There's a good chance that the guy that's showing up doesn't even really want to show up. Just has to. You know what I mean? So I think that's an important point for when you're dealing with specifically around grow stuff. Don't be over your numbers, and just keep in mind that when they show up to investigate things, sometimes it's just simply because they have to follow up on a complaint. It's not because they're out to bust you. Not that they're not, they might be, but just keep in mind there's a good chance that they'll just show up and make sure that you are under your numbers, check their little boxes they have to check, and then go back to fighting actual crime.
Yeah, for sure.
So what else is on our list there, Steve? I brought up something else. We about
I
covered
got everything that I had on my topic list. Is there anything else that you got?
I don't think so. I mean, like I said, most of my stuff is the powdery mildew stuff. I did have, let's see. I mentioned that company that sent me the roll of stuff to be able to check that stuff out. That's from Global Plastic Sheeting in Solar Wrap Farms. So I will, Solar Wrap Films. So they make the greenhouse material that I showed you guys in the first episode of the podcast. And that's actually really cool. What they're doing is I have an existing carport structure frame right now that I've always used for greenhouses. I think it's a Max Canopy AP or something like that. Anyway, I've always used those because the frames are pretty cheap. They're only like $150, and you can just put plastic over them. So I've always used those for greenhouses. And so now I have, now that I have those and we want to put their type of material on it, they actually are going to build a structure that's exactly the same specs as this one and figure out how to install it and how it's going to work the best, and then send me the plans to do all of it. So that's pretty cool of them to take the time to do that. And like I said, they already sent me the Ultra Skim stuff that they sell from the Global Plastic Sheeting out of San Diego. So want to give them a shout out. And if you need some Ultra Skim or some greenhouse material, go ahead and check them out. They have the Solar Wrap stuff. It's like basically the bubble wrap kind of insulated stuff. It creates a lot of insulated pockets and a lot of tensile strength from having those in there. So they wind rated up to like 140 miles an hour and like 3 feet of snow load. So if you're looking for some greenhouse material that will last a long time, or specifically in harsh environments. I know I talked to one guy from Canada the other day that was looking at putting in a greenhouse and starting an aquaponics grow. I don't remember his name now. I'll have to look that up. But anyway, so if you're in any of those places where you get a heavy snow load or you get high winds, like on the coast, for instance, especially on the coast, because a lot of times you can't grow outdoors on the coast because the salt water can be an issue. I know a lot of the coastal growers up here complain about it. But any of those situations, high wind or high snow load, I suppose it would probably be pretty decent for hail and stuff as well. So if you have extreme weather, go ahead and check them out. That's about the only thing I had.
Alrighty. Well, if that's it, I guess we'll wrap things up. Definitely make sure to check out over at Do Grow Show. We have a whole section on aquaponics under their growers section, grower blog section, I think it is. And then be sure to check out my YouTube channel, which is Ponics. The next 1 to 2 weeks, I'll start having some footage from Jamaica here. It's just got a lot of running around, a lot of paperwork, a lot of kind of stuff that's not a whole lot interesting to you guys at the moment. So you know, ordering materials and all that stuff, that's not really that interesting. So we'll get that up as soon as you know, we have some construction and stuff. I got a tripod. We're gonna set up you know, a kind of a time lapse thing to turn on every once in a while and film while we're building everything. It'll be really cool. So we'll have a bunch of great footage of that coming up, and then I think that's it for now. And then Marty, you want to talk about your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is AP Meds, like Aquaponic Meds. Go ahead and check me out on there, or if you hit on Steve's channel, it's on the featured channel list on the side, and vice versa. If you hit my channel, you can find Steve's on the side over there. And are you gonna have your girlfriend shoot some videos of your girl back home? You should make her
Yeah, I'll get her do some video on there. I just haven't had a chance to. I've been so busy. Like I said, I've seen it on video twice just to know what the heck is going on. But yeah, I've just been so busy with other stuff. But yeah, that is something that I'll have another follow up with the girl that back in Colorado. But at the moment, it's lower on the priority list than everything else I have going on. Oh, I don't know did I mention last time about Dope Magazine? If not, definitely check out. I did an interview with Dope Magazine that'll be coming up in a future episode soon as well.
Oh yeah, you did mention that.
Yeah, I've been talking with them the last week or so as well. So, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channels. If you guys have a question, you could write me at potentponics@gmail.com, or and I can pass it on to Marty, or you know, if you have some other one that you want to mention. If not, no big deal.
Message me on Facebook. My name is Marty Waddell. You can find us in the Aquaponic Cannabis Growers group on Facebook. You know, you can leave messages on there, or just find us through there. I accept messages from people that aren't my friends on Facebook, so you can just go ahead and message me on there if you have a question. On any of the YouTube channels, you can message me directly on YouTube, which is kind of a pain, but you can do it. Or you can just leave a comment in the comment section on any of the videos, especially the podcasts. If you watch or you're watching along after this has been posted, and you have a question, then just go ahead and post it down at the bottom, and we go through and review those. I didn't see any of mine from last week, but the week before we did have some. So
I didn't actually. I can double check real quick right before we finish, just to make sure there's no questions from last week. I don't think I had any, but just to be sure, let me double check real quick. I don't want anyone to feel like they got forgotten. Check here. So we had, no, I didn't have any other. So, all right.
I had a reminder say that he's been following my YouTube channel for a while, and thanks for the great content. The podcast is kick-ass too. So thanks for the
Awesome.
kick-ass podcast, Steve.
Well, thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate it, and make sure to join us next time. I guess as long as it works for me and Marty, we're gonna try to keep doing this on Wednesdays for now. In the middle of the day is pretty good for me because it's too hot for me to go work in the yard or work on any of the systems or anything. It's just too hot. So we work on it in the morning and the evening. So, you know, middle of the day, it works great. So we'll kind of, unless something changes a whole lot for either one of us, it'll be kind of a normal thing.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening and have a great day. And we'll see you guys next week for, oh yeah, I guess next week's 420. It'll be fun.
Oh yeah, should do something special for that. I'll think of something.
Yeah.
I think maybe I'll set up in the grow room. I've been thinking about doing the podcast from the
We might, depending on some things here, we might actually be running out to Nick Grill. We're trying to find a festival or something to go to out here. Somebody told us there might be a 420 festival on Nick Grill. We'll see what happens. No promises yet. We're trying to see what's going on, but that's a possibility. So we'll see what happens here.
All right, sounds good. I'll talk to you later, Steve.
All right, see you guys later. Cheers.